Hi, this is Tad from Ireland, and today I'm joined by Adrian Cunningham, who's an SE based in Dallas. Hey, Adrian.
Hey, how you doing today, Tad?
Hey, really well. So, you were just mentioning an interesting customer you're working with in the transportation industry that's doing some kind of unique stuff.
Yeah, they've got a very revolutionary way as far as transporting people short distances. It's pretty cool. They're definitely a few further along than we are as far as being mobility.
Right on. And what was the challenge that they had that brought them to you and the enterprise browser?
Well, the real challenge was around some of the cloud security. Specifically, though, as far as what they're wanting to do is how they manage and maintain some of the data and some of the even like the Slack access over specific applications, but specifically around managed users versus unmanaged devices. So how to build out policies for a little bit stricter control when users were connecting from their personal devices or even contractors versus on the managed PCs and laptops.
Yeah, this is a common theme we've heard before where if you're using a personal device and you're accessing potentially sensitive data, that's obviously a risk because that data can become unmanaged. It can be lost to your personal device's desktop.
Right. Where I'd say this really kind of got different though in the specific use case is that they wanted to be able to allow their users to actually kind of go outside of the browser. Because you look at about 99% of the use cases we build out for customers, it's really about containing the data and giving access to those SaaS apps or web services only within the browser itself. But they wanted to have a little bit more flexibility to allow, for example, access for Slack through the typical client that they're used to on the desktop, and then also utilize the G Drive syncing capability while still doing browser enforcement and enforcing or not allowing that type of access for unmanaged devices.
Yeah, so balancing those competing concerns of data security with user experience and making sure that users can still be productive with Slack and their G Drive and the
Correct,
browser.
correct. So we kind of setting that up, kind of at the end of the day, we were able to do that. What was cool about it is that we did have the flexibility to say, okay, well, for a managed device, we can still allow the users to utilize Slack, be able to communicate on that as normal. But if a user is actually connecting from their personal device, once they actually tried to click on the Slack client itself, it actually prompted them to open it back up in the Island browser. And then the same thing for the G Drive sync. So we had the capability to make sure that, again, not allowing them to maintain that user experience for what they're used to on the managed devices, but when it came to whether it was, on a MacBook that they're utilizing at home or their own laptop, still enforcing them to essentially utilize the Island browser to contain that data, protect the data.
Yeah. I think that's a really good example of how it's not just we have to go beyond simple enable disable. We have to be thoughtful about what capabilities are allowed on which devices by which users at which time, and it's that additional dexterity around how we design policies that I think is really really critical for building workable policies that users can still be productive
Right. The
with.
flexibility was pretty cool. Definitely. And they were pretty happy about that too. The other big kind of, I guess, use case to kind of throw out there was, from my perspective, working in other companies, other security companies, with what we call the Island Private Access, we have the capability to go beyond the VPN and give direct access to a specific service, as opposed to with a VPN, it's basically you're allowing the user on the network. Um, I was pretty impressed at our capability. Another customer was extremely impressed with how fast and how efficiently we were able to add that connection to some of their internal resources within their network.
Yeah. And doing that, as you mentioned, it's not we're not adding a VPN client. We're not connecting the whole device. It's only that specific application through the browser, through the Island Enterprise browser, that gets that secure connection back to your internal resource.
Correct. What makes it so nice, though, is it's all laid out there, right? Obviously within the browser and whatever the user's entitled to as far as application access based on their user roles. But essentially, once we kind of did a little bit on the back end, maybe with our administrators for the networking, 15 minutes max to actually set up the rule. We had allotted an hour to do that, to make the first connection. We knocked it out in 2 or 3 minutes, and so we went ahead and added a few more applications for direct access for those applications on prem. So I think the customer was really surprised at how easy the flow was, and again, the security around giving just access to the service only.
That's perfect. A refreshing change when it's actually significantly faster and easier than you had budgeted for.
Sure, definitely.
Well, Adrian, thanks so much for joining us to describe this customer opportunity you're working with, and we'll have you back on here soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.